This is a peaceful and ordinary student town. In this city, people would even leave their houses without locking them. Even when the owner was not home, strangers would hold parties in the house. But in one single night, everything turned into horror. 4 students, for no reason, were brutally murdered. The killer seemed to leave no trace behind. No neighbors heard anything. No signs of resistance. But there was only one piece of evidence left at the crime scene. And that evidence was supposed to expose the killer, or mislead everyone? Who committed this murder and why? Is it just a coincidence? Or a terrifying act planned by an evil mind? The truth may be even more frightening than you expect. Today we are going to talk about this horrific story, so turn on the cosmic mode in your brain, because in the universe no one will disturb you while watching this video. The University of Idaho is a place known for its tranquility, educating thousands of students every year. It is a university located in the town of Moscow, Idaho, bordering Washington. The town has about 25,000 residents, several thousand of whom are students. At the beginning of the video, I introduce you to our characters to immerse you in the story. Kaylee Goncalves and Maddie Mogan were very close friends since childhood. They went to school together, traveled together, and grew up together. Kaylee's father loved Maddie like his own daughter. They were simply inseparable friends. They met in 6th grade and had never separated since. When choosing a university, they chose the University of Idaho just to stay together. Maddie was studying marketing, while Kaylee planned to become a teacher. Maddie was described as a very cheerful girl who always made great jokes and was ready to make her friends laugh. Kaylee liked to plan everything in advance. If her family or friends were traveling, Kaylee would prepare a special program so that everyone would get the most impressions together. She loved fashion and always achieved the goals she set. She was the middle of 5 children and always told her siblings that women can achieve success just like men. Both Kaylee and Maddie were 21 years old. On November 13, 2022, Kaylee wasn't supposed to be at that house with her friends. Since she was planning to move to another place, the reason she stayed here was to show her friend the new car she bought and to spend a week with her friend. Xana Kernadal and Ethan Chapin were a couple. They were one of the popular couples at the university. When Xana and Ethan first saw each other, they genuinely liked each other. Both the boy and the girl were 20 years old. Here is the house they lived in at 1122 King Road. Most residents around here were students, and since events and gatherings were held frequently, noise was an everyday norm. Except for these 3 girls and the boy, 2 more students lived in the house. 2 students lived on the 1st floor, Xana Kernadal and Ethan Chapin lived on the 2nd floor, while the 2 friends lived on the 3rd floor. They were very active on social media. On that tragic day, November 12, Kaylee posted on Instagram, "I am so happy because every day I am surrounded by such amazing people." On the night of November 12th to 13th, the 2 friends returned home at 1:45 a.m., and 5 minutes later the couple entered and went to their rooms. That night Kaylee called her ex-boyfriend several times late at night. The reason is unknown. In addition, Kaylee had her dog Murphy in the house. Kaylee had bought this dog as a gift for her ex-boyfriend, but that night it was with Kaylee. At 4 a.m., Dylan, who sleeps on the 1st floor, stayed overnight on the 2nd floor and woke up to strange noises. At first she thought Kaylee was playing with her dog. But it sounded like crying. Suddenly she stepped outside and saw a man dressed in black wearing a mask walking toward her, and in terror she was paralyzed. Dylan only saw the killer's eyes that night. The girl later said she would never be able to forget those terrifying eyes. The killer did not do anything to the girl, passed by her and fled. Shocked, the girl returned to her room. At that moment she was in a state where she couldn't comprehend anything. These events occurred around 4:17 a.m. After quite some time, past 11 o'clock, Dylan told the incident to her other friends, and then an unknown person called the police to report the crime there. Police kept the caller secret, but stated clearly that it was not one of the suspects. After the call, police didn't take it too seriously, thinking it might be burglary or something similar. But when they arrived and opened the bedroom doors, a horrifying scene emerged. According to various reports, Kaylee and Maddie were in the same place, either both on the bed or one on the bed and the other lying on the floor. The girls were dead, with multiple stab wounds. On the floor and walls, red stains and splattered blood were visible. The same scene was present in Xana and Ethan's room. There was only one difference between them: the boy and the girl had possibly been awake during the attack and tried to defend themselves. Because there were wounds on Xana's hands indicating an attempt at self-defense. Both of them had lost a large amount of blood. There were even red traces on the outside wall. Police also found Kaylee's dog. It was quietly waiting for its owner in her room. This event made no logical sense. How did this happen? Why didn't the dog hear anything, and why did it not interfere? Where were the two people living on the first floor at that time? And most importantly, who did this? The last murder in the town of Moscow had occurred about 10 years before. No one expected such a thing from a student town that was always quiet. People did not lock their doors, and students freely entered and left each other's homes. Sometimes more than 100 people would gather in a house. Meanwhile, the owner of the house would be at a completely different party elsewhere. They didn't even know who was inside the house, who was drinking alcohol, or doing anything else. But it always ended well. However, sometimes neighbors would call the police because of loud music. Police had even come to the front of this house shortly before the tragedy. In these videos, it is seen that Xana opens the door. Neighbors had complained about the noise, so police arrived. She said there were guests in the house. But at that time, she was already about to sleep. That means that the people in the house were not her friends, but could have been friends of neighbors or even complete strangers. After this crime, everything changed. Some people entered their rooms and locked the doors, others who lived together gathered in one place and could not sleep until morning. Because it was unclear whom the killer might attack next. Parents could not even bring their children to their final resting place immediately, because the killer could attend the memorial as well. But on November 21st, Ethan's funeral was held. On November 30th, funerals for Kaylee and Maddie were held. I want to tell you the words that the father said about his daughter Kaylee that day, because they were very touching. Today we are here to talk about what we have lost. I would like to make you laugh, but unfortunately, we may cry more. Because we lost 4 bright souls. I knew 2 of them, Kaylee and Maddie. They were wonderful people. They had been friends since 6th grade. They lived together, did homework together. They did everything together, in school and at university. They lived in the same house. And in the end, they died together. In one room, in one bed. As hard as it is to accept this truth, it brings us a little peace. They were together at that moment. They were the most precious people to each other in this world. You may ask, what is the police doing? Are they not searching? Yes, they were doing everything they could. Naturally, since this was 2022, many reports were spreading online and everyone was presenting their own theories as if they had done something significant. Many were surprised. How is the killer not found in the 21st century where cameras and DNA analysis exist? But police and their traces remained everywhere. There were also those who asked, did the survivors not see anything? And most likely, they provided valuable information to the police, which is why they were not on the suspect list. Since the killer was still free, police said nothing about the testimony, because the killer might also murder them. At that time, a white Hyundai Elantra caught the attention of the police. It had appeared multiple times on camera footage. It was unclear whether this car belonged to the killer or someone else, and there were no blood traces or similar evidence inside the car. When the forensic expert examined the bodies, he revealed extremely horrifying details. These details even shocked many journalists, because such information is usually not disclosed by the police. The victims had been stabbed multiple times, the wounds were deep and severe, some even reaching the bones. Some of the wounds were very specific, indicating that an experienced criminal or a psychopathic individual may have committed the act. During this time, various people were being pointed to as suspects on social media. For example, they suspected a young man who had been standing behind students when they went to buy food at night, He was wearing a hood, watching them, and then followed behind them. The police spoke with this man and confirmed he had no connection. Kaylee's ex-boyfriend was also among the suspects. People even insulted him online and sent abusive messages, but the police pressed no charges against him. The real culprit was arrested on December 30th, on New Year's Eve, in another part of the country, in the state of Pennsylvania. He was taken into custody at 3 a.m., almost the same time when the students were killed. So the police had been tracking the suspect since December 7th. And it all started with that white Hyundai Elantra. Its owner turned out to be 28-year-old Brian Kohberger. Who was he? Brian Kohberger had often been mocked by his friends in the past and later began to be violent toward others. As he grew up, the young man became addicted to drugs. He was so addicted that he was even prepared to sell his own relatives. But his willpower was fairly strong and he managed to get out of the problem. He quit the habit, but its psychological impact remained with him. He later began studying criminalistics. He carried out research on criminal psychology and murders. According to his classmates, he was far smarter academically than others. He posted about crimes on online forums and even created questionnaires analyzing the thought patterns of psychopaths. Here is one of them. Hello, my name is Brian. I would like to invite you to participate in a study aimed at studying the emotions and psychological factors you experienced during the commission of a crime. In particular, this study focuses on your most recent crime. Tell me, what thoughts and feelings did you experience while committing the crime? It was also said that Kohberger did not treat girls well. It was recorded on cameras at the crime scene on the night of November 13th, as well as driving around various places in town, at a gas station and along other streets. It was found that the car was registered in the university parking lot in Pullman. Pullman was a neighboring city to Moscow where the incident occurred. That white Elantra was seen circling King Road, the driver trying to park, and then stopping. This happened at roughly 4 o'clock in the morning. Brian Kohberger's phone lost signal at 2:45, it had either been turned off or put in airplane mode. The phone powered on again at 5 o'clock. Isn't that a very strange coincidence? Legal experts said that the phone being off at that time could be a very important piece of evidence. Because ordinary people do not typically switch off their phones in the middle of the night and then turn them back on shortly after. Worse, Kohberger's phone was recorded again near that house at 9 o'clock in the morning. Why did the perpetrator return to that place? For example, he might have wanted to check whether the police or ambulance had arrived. Or maybe he intended to pick up something he had accidentally dropped. The second hypothesis holds up, the killer had left something there. It was the sheath of the knife. After the crime, he suddenly started speaking less. He hid his car in different places. There were scratch marks on his hands, but he linked them to sports. Clothes with blood stains were found in his home. The most suspicious fact, he was following the police investigation very closely. Kohberger's confidence in himself was high. He seemed to be trying to figure out where the police would make a mistake. But under his boundless confidence, he made only one mistake, yes, that knife sheath. The police examined the fingerprint found on the knife sheath and biological samples taken from the sheath's inner parts. When these data were compared to the DNA database, the result was astonishing, it matched Kohberger's DNA. He had been in the area of the crime several times according to his mobile phone. When his social media messages were reviewed, a connection to one of the victims was discovered. He had been constantly searching for information about killings. He had visited death-related forums on the dark web. He even Googled how to commit the perfect murder. When Kohberger was arrested, the police burst in. He was in the dormitory. He was shocked but offered no resistance. He was only somewhat afraid of such a raid. At the time of arrest, he was completely calm. He smiled at the policeman, as if he knew all of this in advance. Is this just a coincidence? Or did he, being a criminologist, actually calculate the police's mistakes in advance? January 5, 2023. The trial began. Kohberger was brought into the courtroom. Everyone in the room was looking at him. Witnesses to the crime, families of the murdered students, and journalists were trying to find some sign of humanity on his face. But he simply watched everyone with a cold stare. He looked at the judge and without any excitement answered, "Not guilty." But there were so many pieces of evidence against him that no matter how much he denied, the truth would eventually surface.